Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, blogger inside the OAA, and one of the hosts of Between Terminus and Oriented Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome our friends watching on Oxford Community Television and also those watching on YouTube. Got a long show here. Of course, apologize for missing last week. I was not feeling the greatest. Been battling this disease that was going around, but I'm better now. So we got a great show. If you've been keeping up on the blog, I'm at Inside the OAA at SammyMTaramina at blogspot.com or Lake Orion Sports. It's at the Dragon's Den. It's at sammy.taramina at blogspot.com. So, a lot of things to cover around the league. Of course, a lot of football that was going around, of course, these last few weeks. Of course, the season, it's up to week 5. We're in the middle part of the season going forward. And there's been a lot of interesting storylines going around, of course, resembling. There's been a lot of teams that are 2-2. And then also, there's been some teams that have been surprises, and there's been some teams that have been just very much disappointments going around. When you look at what happened, they recapping the week, of course. Also, we got some volleyball updates, information, all that. Of course, the state rankings are out there, of course, with Clarkston being 5th, Orion 8th, Stony Creek 23rd, Bloomfield Hills got an honorable mention from the Michigan volleyball rankings on Twitter. So, a lot of things going on in the OA this week. But let's go to main sports, which is football, of course. A lot of things happened during the week, of course. We're going to go over couple specific teams, more specifically, more in depth. There's been a lot of teams that have that are surprises, but also a lot of teams that have been major disappointments as of late. So, let's look at a couple of these teams, of course. Let's go with one of the teams that's been really on edge lately, and that is the Falcons from Farmington. Of course, a couple weeks ago we had Sean Cotter here working the here on OA Now, and the state of Farmington football, of course, has been just absolutely a disaster in the making over there. Of course, last week, this is a team that played Seaholm. Seaholm, of course, is having a struggling themselves. They've been having a tough year themselves. And this was a team that was up 21-0 at one point, and then they were up 28-7 at the other point. So they were up by 21 points on 2 separate occasions at home against the Maples, a team that's been struggling to score, struggling to stop people. And then all of a sudden, Seaholm, the Maples made a rally and ended up scoring with about less than a minute to go. Tied the game up at 28. It was 28-27, so Seaholm coach Jim DeWald ended up going for 2 and ended up scoring. So, and that ended up making the score Seaholm 29, Farmington 28. So, when you look at, and then of course, the things that are going on during the game, of course, hearing that Coach John Bechtel was in a little bit of a sort of like a yell fest with one of the assistant coaches during that game. And then, of course, the Farmington parents have not been happy with the way the direction of the program is going. So, when you look at the situation in that situation, and then, of course, there's another team in Farmington that's struggling. It's North Farmington. And, of course, North Farmington, they're another team that's 0-4. We'll go over them in a minute. But let's go to Farmington first. Of course, this is a team that, they made the playoffs last year at 5-4. They've lost 6 straight games. They have not played very well. They've had 2 running clocks against them. They were just blown out by Groves 45. They were blown out by Groves. Wait, I got my notes here. They were blown out by Oak Park 42-0, and then they were blown out by Harrison 40-0. So when you look at the situation in that situation with the Falcons, they've they've missed Zach Purdy, the running back. He's been hurt, but he did come back. But this was games that they should not have lost. The Seahome game especially was one they should not have lost, because when you look at it, Farmington's got a lot more. I thought Farmington was more talented than Seahome coming in this game, but I just did not trust John Bechtel's team coming in the season. That was why I said that Farmington would be 0-9 to finish the year, because I really didn't trust what Farmington had back. I mean, this was a team that, when you look at, they had a quarterback, their starting quarterback, original one, transferred to Celine. And then, of course, you got questions up front, and then you have some questions surrounding the morale of the team. Of course, when you look at Farmington, this is a football team that's been kind of, like in Harrison's shadow. So, and Harrison, of course, has had Farmington's number lately. Of course, this year, Harrison knocked off Farmington 40-0, in which Farmington was completely overmatched in that game. In specific. Now, when you look at the situation now, why I'm saying parents have not been happy with Bechtel, there's a lot of reasons why they've not been happy with the way the program's been going. And you look at it here, the parents I heard over there, they were very upset with how the game went and how the coaching was over there. And it looked like in that game on Friday down there, and it said that in my inside information guy, he told me that Jim DeWall badly outcoached Bechtel, and it might have been the case, and that's what happened here. And you look at the situation, how that's going, and a lot of parents have been really frustrated with Bechtel. They've been calling for his head. I mean, like, they've been wanting him gone. They've been wanting him. But here's the thing. It's hard for a coach that's been there 37 years and, to just let him go. And it's difficult, for a coach. He's a nice guy. John Bechtel's a nice guy. But the question is, can he coach the team? He's led Farmington to a couple playoff performances, division championship. Then again, they were a division championship a few years ago. But this is a team that's lost 6 straight games. And they have not played very well. And do I think it may be time for a changeover down there? When I look at the situation down there, it might be, I don't know if it's time for a change yet, but there's been a lot of unrest, a lot of turmoil surrounding the football team down there at Farmington. But as I mentioned, it's going to be very difficult going forward. If winning cures a lot of things, and right now Farmington is not winning, and it's showing its ugly head right now. And you got parents very upset with Bechtel, and you got parents, and then of course they got them calling for Bechtel's head. I mean, the way the direction program's going. I mean, if you think the hot seat is warm now down there in Farmington, it's gonna get super hot down there. And, as long as Bechtel's not winning games, then the call for his ouster is going to get really, really real. And, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it's going on like this right now down there in Farmington, I mean, they had a lot of, I knew this was going to be a very tough year for them, but I think it'd be this bad. I mean, yeah, they had a tough 3-game stretch, once probably they were 0-3. But that was a game that Farmington really needed. That game with Seahome. And then now they sit 0-4. I don't know if I can see them winning the game this season. I really don't. And that's the unfortunate thing down there with Farmington going forward. So let's go to another team here, of course, that's been a disappointing team so far, and that's the North Farmington Raiders. Of course, they're off to an 0-4 start as well. This is a team that really has been really underperforming in the last year. Was a team that finished 5-4. They lost a lot of talent. They did. I mean, some players did not come out and play for this team. it was going to be a hard task for Coach Todd Schultz and his team to really look at positives. And then of course you're getting in the play where you're getting just shellacked. You had 3 games where you had running clock against you. It has not gone well down there at North Farmington. They don't have a freshman or JV team. That's a huge problem. This has been a team that's really been getting just completely shattered. I mean, early in there they played Wall Lake Northern. They got shellacked 56-0. Then they played Groves. They got shellacked 45-0. Then they played Adams, and they got shellacked 50-3. In the last 4 games, North Farmington has allowed 172 points. That's 43 points a game. That's terrible. That is inexcusable. Whereas with Farmington, they've allowed 161 points. Last 4 games, that's 40.2 points a game. That's also terrible. And then you look at a situation as here, and then of course you look at North Farmington offensively. The Raiders have only scored 10 points. That was 7 points against Troy Athens and 3 points against Rochester Adams. That's only 2.5 points a game. That's not good. That is not good. And it's been a difficult road for the Raiders so far because they have not been able to get that consistency. And the reason why they sit 0-4 is because they don't have that consistency. They're not that good. And of course, when you have 3 games in which you have running clock against you, that deserves maybe a trip down to the Blue Division. North Farmington was a team in the White Division. I thought they would be very impressive. I thought they would be a team that could make that next step. I knew it was going to be a tough year for them. I didn't think it'd be this bad for them. And they're struggling because they can't find a consistent offense. I know they're trying to gel a new quarterback in there. And their defense is not very good. And that's an unfortunate situation for Coach Todd Schultz. Now, I don't know what parents are saying over there. I know you can't fire Schultz. He's the AD. He's the athletic director over there. So that's a very tough spot for North Farmington to be in, right now. When you look at the situation with them going forward, I just think that, and here's the thing, those are the 2 schools that are supposed to be kept open the next 3 years when Harrison closes, and Harrison, meanwhile, is doing better than both those schools. Is it because they have the coaching? Yeah. John Harrington's a heck of a coach. You look at what he did against West Bloomfield, a team that was very good. He shut them out 28-0. His Hawks shut them out 20-0. I mean, and then you look at Farmington and North Farmington, their combined record is 0-8, 0-5 in league play. Farmington's played an extra league game. When I look at this week's games for both Farmington and North Farmington going forward, it's going to be very difficult for both teams this week. Farmington's got to play Oxford. Oxford's a team that, did not look, they looked very good offensively. I mean, Ethan Williams played very well. He had 2 touchdowns in that game against Oregon. But, and they're going to be coming in just flat out mad. And then, of course, you have North Farmington. They got to go to Oak Park to play the Knights. And Oak Park, they've been coming off a tough first 2 games of the season. And then they managed to turn the ship around, including a very big win at Adams last week when they knocked them off 44-43. So, when I look at the situation here with both these teams, the only way one of these 2 teams is going to win is against each other. Now, North Farmington, I think, has got a better schedule down the stretch. But, there's a couple winnable games for North Farmington down there. But I think that the best chance for a win is against each other. And that's the Farmington Cup. And we all remember last year's game in which North Farmington won that game. Coming back, they were down 26-14 late, and then they came and beat Farmington. They broke Farmington's heart. That was unbelievable how they broke their heart last year. And they had the Farmington Cup to prove it. I know North Farmington's got to go to Farmington. And yet these are the two schools that are going to be kept open, and Harrison's closing. Somebody's got to clean house. Somebody's got to clean house. I mean, whether it's Harrison or Farmington, or North Farmington, or Farmington, one of those two teams got to clean house. Because when I look at the situation down there, I think Harrison right now is the best team in Farmington Hills. And the way they're playing, Harrison might be, and it's going to be a very unfortunate situation when Harrison closes in 2 years. You know, when that happens, it's going to be a disaster. Who would want to play at North Farmington or Harrison? Or wait, take it back, at Farmington. Who would want to play there? You know, when you look at the situation there, who would want to play at North Farmington or at Farmington? The way both teams are playing. I know a lot of parents have been calling for Bechtel's head. I don't know what the calls are for Schultz to maybe just focus on AD duties. You know, of course, it didn't have, I know Tim Carradas, of course, I think he's the principal at North Farmington. And he was formerly the girls basketball coach. You know, he focused more on the principal duties when they, when he became principal. And then, of course, Jeff Simpson took over in girls basketball. Farmington and North Farmington have got a lot of things to address before Harrison closes. And I just don't know how that this is going to address. And when you look at the situation here, both these teams have to make adjustments. They have to make, both teams got tough games this week. There's no doubt about that. Farmington with Oxford, and then you have North Farmington with Oak Park. I think both those teams are going to get killed this week. Not being mean here, but they've got there's a lot of turmoil surrounding this team. A lot of turmoil surrounding both teams. I've never seen more turmoil at one school like at Farmington. I'm not sure how it is at North Farmington, but I know there's a lot of turmoil at Farmington. Is it time for Mary Sheltron to take action? I'm not sure, but I know there's a lot of people frustrated down at Farmington, and there's going to be changes made. It wouldn't surprise me if there's changes made, with that situation down there. And then, of course, you got North Farmington. Of course, Todd Schultz is the AD down there at North Farmington. And, he's got a young football team. There's no doubt about that. So I kind of want to give North Farmington a pass a little bit there on that stretch. But for them to sit 0-4 and to get 3 running clocks against them, that's not going to cut it. And it's an unfortunate situation what's going on down there. And to see Harrison is right now sitting 3-1. Best team in Farmington Hills. And they're the ones having the close. I just have to nod my head. Unless either North Farmington or Farmington make changes, then I don't know. I don't see those kids from Harrison, once they do leave, playing in the Farmington School District. So both those teams have got to get their act fixed. They got to get their teams fixed. Do they have to lead the firings? Possibly. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on the situation surrounding North Farmington and Farmington going forward. When we come back, we're going to talk more football here. Of course, what is going on with Oxford's defense here on OAA Now?
We want to have it at home. I love working on my Habitat home.
Soy dueño de una casa de Habitat.
My neighbor is a Habitat homeowner.
Being a Habitat homeowner has changed our lives.
My mortgage payment for Habitat is less than what I paid for rent.
Habitat for Humanity of Oakland County currently has homes available with mortgage payments lower than most rent payments. If you or someone you know needs decent and affordable housing, call 248-338-1843 or visit our website at habitatoakland.org.
Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Tamina here, of course. We got more football talk here, of course, here on OAA Now. Of course, there's a couple of teams we got to mention here off to some good starts. Ferndale is a team that is sits at 2-2. They benefited from the MHA's new policy called the co-op program. Of course, the co-op program, if you wanted to know, was it's a football. It's like a merger. If you have a small enough enrollment that you can merge with other teams in your school district. And Ferndale University is a high school in the Ferndale School District. And, of course, Coach Eric Royal ended up taking between 10 to 12 players to play for the high school team, for the Ferndale Eagles team this season. And they're off to a 2-2 start. You know, I was very impressed with the Eagles, even in defeat. You know, when they lost, I thought they were very impressed against Bloomfield Hills. They didn't give up against the Blackhawks. I thought they played well against them. You know, Bloomfield Hills is a very good team this year. But as I mentioned with them, October is going to be their month when they get tested for Bloomfield Hills, when they have to go to Berkeley. They have to play Berkeley, Notre Dame Prep, and Orion in that stretch. So Ferndale's a team that I've been really impressed with, even though that with the co-op program and all that, I think it makes a lot of sense for them going forward. I do like the direction with the how the Eagles are going forward with that team moving forward. Let's look at the Oxford Wildcats. Here's a team, of course, last week did not look good. This is a team offensively looks very good. I like this offense they've been running. Of course, I like Parker Fleming, their quarterback. Of course, he's a very good quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback, no doubt about it. And, of course, Ethan Williams, their all-around running back. You know, he had 155 yards against Warren last week. But, you know, when you look, and, of course, Oxford's special teams is solid. I mean, Bud Riley has got a solid special teams core and special offensive core. The problem, and it frustrates Wildcat fans. I know it frustrates Bill Service, I know, at OCTV. And you got to look at that defense, man. That defense is the reason why Oxford's been struggling lately. I mean, you look at last season, they allowed almost 300 points last season. And then this season, they're on the verge again of allowing over 300 points. The last 4 games, Oxford's allowed a total of 143 points. And that's in 4 games. That's 35.7 points a game. That's not good. When you look at, if I'm Bud Riley, I would be more involved a little bit in your defense, because your offense is clearly not the problem. You know, Ethan Williams, clearly not the problem running the ball. Fleming, not the problem at quarterback. It's your defense. And that's the reason why Oxford's struggling, is they're giving up a ton of points. You know, even in their win against Romeo, they gave up 26 points. That's not going to cut it. West Bloomfield gave up 27. And then, of course, the Orion game more recently, 52 points to the Dragons. A team that, was injury riddled this year. You let Max Hornifer score 5 touchdowns in that game. I mean, when you look at that game, it was a little bit, I thought that Orion Oxford game was a little bit of both, Orion's ability on offense and also Oxford's ability on defense. They didn't look good again. And then, of course, they didn't look good against, they've been struggling. I mean, if you really want to look, the reason why Oxford is struggling, why they sit 1-3, it's the defense. Obviously, the defense is a huge concern up there. It's a huge concern up there at Oxford. And that's something that I hope that Coach Bud Riley fixes, is that defense. They have not been very good. And, it's a difference why they haven't been in the playoffs the last few years. It's because of that defense. They have to fix that if they want to contend. Then they played Clarkson. They didn't do well. They gave 38 points in that game. So Oxford this season's given up 26, 27, 38, 52. That's not good. That is not good when you look at that team right there. They have to fix their defense. That is the reason why Oxford is struggling. Is your defensive mindset has to change. If your defense is solid, then you can run the ball. You can play the pound the rock scheme. If you're trailing, then you're going to have to play a lot of catch-up. And Oxford's been doing that the last 3 weeks. That's not good. That's not good. So that's something they got to address with Oxford there is their defensive mindset. That's why they sit 1-3. That's why they sit 1-3. Orion. Here's a team that's been injury-prone the last 3 weeks. In the West Bloomfield game where they end up losing 37-7, they didn't have Ryan Tomlewski got hurt. Johnny Haggett got hurt. They haven't played in 2 weeks. This is an injury-riddled team right now, I think it's the Dragons. But, they did put up 52 last week against Oxford. That's a start. That's a start. But the problem with the Dragons right now is the defense. Last 2 games against West Bloomfield and Oxford, they've allowed 36 points a game. That's not good. And in the season, they've allowed 109 points, 27.5 a game. 27.2 a game. That's not good. That's not good. So they got a lot of work to do to address there the defensive side of the ball. But the offense is starting to click a little bit, which is good. Schedule, though, is going to be very interesting because they got to play Southfield Arts and Tech this week. Southfield Arts and Tech has managed to turn the corner a little bit, especially defensively in their last 3 games where they've only allowed 45 points, which is 15 a game. I mean, when you look at Southfield Arts and Tech, their problems offensively. Yeah, they put 38 last week against Troy Athens. Troy Athens, in my opinion, has been very disappointing. But when you look at what happened in that game, Southfield Arts and Tech, besides the Detroit Martin Luther King game, it's kind of played really well defensively. They limited Clarkson to 18 points. Troy Athens to 14 points. Groves to 13 points. The problem for the Warriors has been their offense, where Southfield has only scored 69 points this year. 17.2 a game. They managed to turn the corner around a little bit. Could it be quarterback play? Could it be, trying to develop chemistry within their offense? I think it's been a huge problem for the Warriors, has been their offense. It's not the defense. The defense is stout. It's just been the offense. So, we'll see what happens with Southfield going forward, Southfield Arts and Tech going forward. But Tim Conn's got to address the offense. A team that I owe a lot of apologies to is Rochester. This is a team that I left for dead when they went 0-2. They had a couple bad losses. They lost to Bloomfield Hills, and then they lost to Adams early in the year. I left Rochester for dead. And then they go into overtime in Pontiac against Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory and beat the Irish 38-32. And then they go out and beat Avondale 29-28, in which Avondale's had a lot of bad luck recently. But Rochester, they sit 2-2 and got a big game this week at Hurley Field. Rochester has managed to do this because their offense is starting to gel. Their offense is playing well. And you got to give that credit to Coach Eric Vernon and his staff. And I owe him an apology. Because I thought they'd be 0-9. But then again, look at their defense. Their defense has not been good. When you look at Rochester, this is a defense that's been just completely, just not very good. You know, when you look at, they allowed 133 points so far in 4 games. That's 33.2 a game. That's not good. That is not good. If this is a team that wants to make the playoffs, Rochester has to fix their defense. And I don't know if I could see it happening this week against Berkeley, because Berkeley's going to be mad after what happened to them against Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory, in which they gave up 26 points and lost 26-3 at Hurley to the Irish. But then again, Rochester beat the Irish in Pontiac. So, think about it. A lot of people ask me, here's a team in Berkeley that upset beat Holly, and then they lose to Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory, and Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory loses to Rochester. What has this world gotten ourselves into? What have they gotten ourselves into? Then you got Adams. Rochester Adams. Very unique team. Had a heartbreaking loss to Oak Park. A nice 3-0 start to start the year. Schedule toughens up for sure. Big game with Harrison coming up. Harrison's a good team, no doubt. It'll test Adams on the road. Again, Adams' schedule is tough from here on out. I mean, they still got to play. I mean, they got Harrison this week. Then they got to play. They've already played Oak Park and lost. I mean, and then they still got to play Stony Creek. Then they got to play Clarkston, which is going to be very tough for them. You know, but when you look at it here, pretty manageable for Adams going forward. They could finish 6-3. And then you got Groves. Actually, I still got Groves, so that's going to be a tough matchup for Adams. So, tough stretch coming up for the Highlanders. So they got to play the Hawks, Falcons, and the Wolves. Not going to be an easy stretch. Oak Park's got a very tough schedule, too. They got to play Clarkston, Southfield, Arts and Tech, and, of course, Harrison. So that's not going to be easy. And Oak Park's got 2 losses right there. So that's not going to be an easy stretch for neither of those 2 teams. Avondale's had a lot of bad luck, as mentioned. Yellow Jackets have been a team that kind of just been going, you know, they've had a rough summer, as we know. Ed Kuchase took over that team. And, you know, they've had 2 heartbreaking losses to, one was New Boston Huron, other one was Rochester. And it was unfortunate what happened there. And end of the day, when you look at what happened there, Avondale, they're 0-4, but I think they're a deceptive 0-4. I think they're going to Bloomfield Hills run for their money in this one. But we'll see. This is a big game, I think, for Ed Kuchase and his team. This is a real big game. if they can come out, send a statement, it can do that by knocking off Bloomfield Hills. That's not going to be an easy game because their schedule gets tougher from there. But when you look at the situation here, it's not going to be easy. There's no doubt about it for Avondale. And they've had a lot of bad luck recently. A lot of it. Pontiac. Pontiac's a team that really, it's been a tough road for Coach John Thompson his first year coming over from Detroit Central. They've struggled so much. I mean, this is a team that, but they've been competitive in some of the games. They've been competitive, So Pontiac, I think they're going on an upward direction right now. I think Pontiac's a team that, even though they lost last week to Hazel Park, I just think that Pontiac, I think they're going to be better in the long haul. And I think John Thompson's going to do that. He's going to do that for him. Hazel Park. They're 2-30 since 2012. Their 2 wins were against Pontiac. How does that happen? If they weren't playing Pontiac, they're 0-30. And it's scary. It's scary to think early in the year, Hazel Park, even though they sit 1-3, they've got devoured in their first 3 weeks of the season by Warren Fitzgerald, where they had 65. Royal Oak Shrine, they had 42. And then they played Berkeley, got crushed. I mean, and then last week their win against Pontiac, they gave 25. Yikes. And now this week, Hazel Park has got Royal Oak. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Very, very interesting. Royal Oak. Very unique. They got a nice win over Troy last week, 28-21. I'm still not impressed with Ray McMahon's team. I'm still not. Even though they had 2 early season losses to Stockbridge, I kind of expected them to go down that game because Stockbridge is a very good team. I knew they would put a high number on there. That Lakeview game still bothers me a lot, how they lost that when they were shut out 21-0. It still does. Their schedule is going to get tougher, though, after Hazel Park. So we'll see what Royal Oak's made of. We will. Troy. I thought that win over Avondale would help them. They've lost 2 straight games. They have not fared well. I'm still shocked that they don't have a freshman team. I still am. But they have not played well defensively in their last 2 games. Now, they played Bloomfield Hills. Bloomfield Hills is a very good team. There's no doubt about that. And then you have Troy. And then, of course, you have last week, in which Troy lost to Royal Oak. It ain't going to end easier for them this week. They play Detroit Country Day. Won't be easy. Stony Creek. Been a tough road for Coach Lansing and his team. Got whooped by Clarkson pretty bad. But like I said, nothing's easy. And I think Stony Creek, all they got to do is move forward. Their opponent this week's West Bloomfield. Shocked how they lost to Harrison. Really shocked how they lost. They got to fix some things. Their schedule is not going to be easy. Well, they got a manageable schedule because you look at Farmington now. That's looking like it's going to be a Laker win. But they still got to play Southfield Arts and Tech and Oxford on the road. Oh, sorry. They already played Oxford. My bad. They still got to play. They got a tough stretch coming up. Troy Athens, I mentioned, my disappointing team. When I look at the schedule that they played, I was disappointed how they lost to Warren Mott. Shocked how they lost to Stony Creek. Surprised when they beat North Farms by a touchdown. And then they got clouded by Southfield Arts and Tech. They got Clarkson this week. Their schedule is absolutely insane because they got to play Clarkson, Orion, Oxford, West Bloomfield, and then they close out Troy. Yikes. And then West Bloomfield, of course, I mentioned earlier. See what happens with them. They'll be fine. I think the Lakers will be fine. I think they're going to be all right going forward. So that's my thoughts on each of the OA teams so far. Of course, if I didn't mention anybody, I think I forgot to mention Groves and Seaholm. Groves a very good team. There's no doubt. I think they're the best team in the league right now, despite their schedule. And then they had to play a Murdersboro schedule. And then Seaholm, that win over Farmington, might be a jump start to their season. We'll see what happens going forward. Okay, now when we come back, we're going to preview Week 5's games and my projections here on OA Now. Welcome back to OA Now. I'm Sammy Termina here. Of course, you can look at my latest. I've updated my district projections going forward. It's also on the blog here. I will send an update on my Twitter page. I'm at Saginaw Bay, so you want to take a look at that. My district thoughts, of course, a lot of changes, a lot of updates have occurred recently in the district projections. So keep an eye on that going forward. So, okay, now let's look at the games this week. Of course, Week 5, we're in middle part of the season. Of course, we got the Battle of Birmingham between Groves and Seaholm. This is a matchup where this does not favor Seaholm really well, especially going against Groves. But Seaholm's win over Farmington, I think, is going to be I hope it's a jump start to their season, despite the fact they got a tough schedule to close out the year. But when you look at Groves, the way Groves has been playing, they got some great wins. I'm a little worried about their last week's game against North Farmington, where they kind of laid back, you know what I mean, 145-0 over North Farmington. Seaholm, but they've been battle tested before. At the end of the day, I just think that the games at Groves, it's there and it's at home for them. It's going to be a raucous place down there at Groves. I just think that I think Seaholm doesn't have much of a chance against Groves, so I'm going to take Groves in that one to knock off Seaholm in that stretch. Another game, let's go to another one here. I got Ferndale taking on Pontiac, of course. This one here, as mentioned, though, when you look at this one, Ferndale got a great running game, great attack. I just think that, when you look at Pontiac's been struggling. They got nothing to lose. They've been 2-36 in 2011. I mean, when you look at Pontiac, this has been a team that they've been very competitive. I think even though the scoring and the record doesn't indicate it, but they've been competing, and that's all you ask for from a John Thompson team. And it's going to be a tough matchup, no doubt, for Pontiac at home against Ferndale. Of course, Ferndale been very competitive in their wins, very competitive in their losses. I mean, this is an Eagles team that I like a lot, and I think they're going to beat Pontiac this week. But this is a surprise playoff team going forward. So I like in this game. I like the Eagles to knock off the Phoenix in this one. I think it's going to be a good game. I really think that's an underrated game that people got to keep an eye on going forward. And I think that's going to be a heck of a game between those two teams, that Ferndale and Pontiac. It's going to be a heck of a game. Underrated game this week. Detroit Country Day in Troy. Detroit Country Day comes in 4-0. Troy comes in 1-3. And you look at what happened, of course. Detroit Country Days played Pontiac a couple weeks ago. The Phoenix were no match for the Yellow Jackets. It was 56-6. And this one here, I just don't think is going to be good for Troy. Because the reason why I think that is because the Yellow Jackets have played by far a tougher schedule than a lot of people think. They played, but who knows? Troy could give them a test, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to give them that strong of a test going forward. I mean, whereas a lot of my co-ops, of course, have said, well, Troy might have an outside chance of pulling off the upset, but I just don't think Troy's going to be able to match up with Detroit Country Day and their athletes, and I just think that, end of the day, I just think Detroit Country Day is going to just roll in this game over Troy, and it won't be even close. So I've got to take Detroit Country Day in this one over Troy, unfortunately. So it's not going to be an easy game going forward. So, in that one. And then, of course, we got next is Royal Oak taking on Hazel Park. This is an interesting game because, as I mentioned earlier in the year, I thought Hazel Park would be much better than the record indicated. I was wrong about that. And then Royal Oak's a team that, Royal Oak has been kind of an up and down team. They had a nice win over Troy last week. It was a good win. I thought their uniforms they wore last week was a complete fashion disaster. How they wore blue jerseys, white pants with a black helmet. I just thought that was a disaster waiting to happen. But either way, I still think when I look at this game, I got to go Royal Oak in this one over Hazel Park. Yeah, Hazel Park's going to be athletic. They're going to be competitive in this game. I just don't think that they are going to match up well with the Ravens going forward in this one. I think Royal Oak's got too much depth for Hazel Park to overcome, and I think it's going to be a long day for the Vikings in this one. I'd be shocked if Hazel Park pulls off the upset against Royal Oak. I'd be really shocked they do that. So that's one of the games as I mentioned here with those two games. I just think that Hazel Park is going to be, they'll be competitive. I think they're going to struggle to score though in this game. I don't trust their quarterback in this one. I don't trust Ewald in this one against Bobby Green, their quarter against Bobby Green. I think Green's due to have a huge game like he did last week against Troy, in which he went off. I think he had 2 touchdowns in that game. So we'll see what happens there in that one. Oxford and Farmington. Oak Park and North Farmington. I put North Farmington in a whole first segment for a reason. And the reason why they're struggling at 0-4, the way they've been struggling, it wouldn't surprise me if this game goes running clock for the 4th time and fourth game in a row. 4th game in about five weeks is going to go running clock. I think at the end of the day, I've got to give Oak Park an advantage. It's going to be a bloodbath down there in Night Valley. I mean, this is not going to be much of a challenge for Oak Park. And, kind of a tune-up for Oak Park, especially I think because they got Clarkston next week, which is going to be a very difficult game for them. And, I think it's going to get really, really ugly down there at Oak Park. And I got to go with, North Farmington, of course. Everything's been storyline tell. And, of course, I mentioned that first segment about North Farmington, about the problems they've had. I think they're a young team, inexperienced team. But, I don't know how the effects of it. I don't know if there's any turmoil surrounding that football program down at North Farmington as there is over at Farmington. But like I said, I just think at the end of the day I'm gonna go Oak Park, and it's gonna be bad. It could be another running clock situation down there at Oak Park for that one. So it's going to be a long day, I think, for Todd Schultz and his team down there at Oak Park for North Farmington. So, next one, we got Oxford and Farmington. As I mentioned, of course, the Farmington, here's everything you need to know about Farmington. Turmoil. They've got their quarterback suspended this week. There's been a lot of parents have been calling for John Bechtel's head. And there's been a lot of turmoil surrounding the Farmington Falcons, and it's been kind of a mess of turmoil starting off here with this team. Farmington blew 2 21-point leads last week against Seaholm, and meanwhile Oxford gave up 52 to Orion. So, and the game's at Farmington, but when I look at this matchup here, I just think Oxford's got a little bit too much more structure. And I think Ethan Williams is going to have a huge game in this one. It would not surprise me if Ethan Williams goes for 200 yards and I would say 5 touchdowns in this game. I would say it would not surprise me. And I think a lot of people on the folks of OCTV and Bill Service will be very happy for this. It would not surprise me that Ethan Williams has 200 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game. That's how bad Farmington's defense is. And it wouldn't surprise me if Parker Fleming has at least a touchdown running and throwing in this game. I think Oxford's going to have a nice win this week against Farmington, and I think the turmoil is going to continue over at Farmington. So it'll be a happy bus ride for Oxford, I think, going down there to Farmington and coming back up. I think it's going to be a good win for the Wildcats going forward over Farmington. Next game I got here is going to be Clarkston and Troy Athens. It's Clarkston's homecoming, everybody. And that's bad news if you're Troy Athens, because the Red Hawks have been a disappointment this year. And of course, they got a big offensive line. You're going against a fast-paced defense. Got Nick Stallworth as your linebacker. And then, of course, and if you're Clarkston, you got JT King as your quarterback, and then Mike Flugel running at the running back spot. This has got so much mismatch written all over it. And you know what? I'm taking Clarkston. It wouldn't surprise me if Clarkston overcomes the spread. And I think Clarkston's going to win this game pretty handily. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a running clock in this game. And it's going to be a long night, I think, for Josh Hepner and the Troy Athens Red Hawks. I think it's going to be a very, very long night. So we'll see what happens there in that one. Next game we got is Orion and Southfield Arts and Tech. I've been talking to a lot of people about this game. Two very unpredictable teams. When you look at the Warriors and the Dragons. Of course, the Warriors, started off 0-2. Started off with this was destroyed by Detroit Martin Luther King 39-0. Orion lost 27-7 to Chippewa Valley, both at Wayne State. And then you look at, of course, Orion lost to West Bloomfield. Southfield Arts and Tech lost to Groves 13-7. Orion lost 37-7. And then you look at last week. Both teams kind of exploded offensively. Southfield Arts and Tech did against Troy Athens, where they put up 38 points on them. Orion put up 52 on Oxford, but they gave up 35 points. The statistics are against the Dragons in this one, but I've talked to a lot of people, and, when you look at the coaching matchup, I kind of got to give an edge to Bell here, the coach Chris Bell in this matchup here, over Tim Conley, even though Tim Conley's got a lot of athletes in this one. So I'm going to give Orion the edge here in pulling off this upset. I think Orion's going to pull it off because the Dragons are due for an upset in this game. And I think, Orion's a major underdog in this game. And something hit me with Notre Dame and Michigan State, you know what I mean? Whereas something hit me with that game. So I just think that it could be it could be like a mini Michigan State Notre Dame type of thing over at Southfield Arts and Tech on a Friday afternoon. So we'll see what happens there in that one. Okay, now next up here is Stony Creek and West Bloomfield. Of course, it's been a long year for Coach Bob Lancey and his team. They were shut out 30-0 by Clarkson last week. West Bloomfield lost 28-0 to Harrison. West Bloomfield should be just mad. I think they're going to explode against Stony Creek. I can't trust Bar Redmond against Taj Mustafa. It's going to be a tough match for Bar Redmond against him. I think Bryce Beasley's going to have a nice day. I think Davian Johnson's going to have a nice day, and Garrett Wynn's going to have a nice day. It's going to be a motivate. I think West Bloomfield's going to go in there and just destroy Stony Creek. I really think it's going to be a bad environment for the Cougars. It's going to get really ugly real fast for them in that one going forward. Bloomfield Hills and Avondale. This is an interesting game here. Of course, Avondale, as mentioned, they've had a lot of bad luck recently. A lot of bad luck. And, it's tough to explain this. For a team that's had a lot of bad luck, they've got to find something that could change their luck in this one. And looking at this game, it's pretty much, I think Bloomfield Hills is primed for an upset because they didn't look good last week against Ferndale. They, this is a tougher game for Bloomfield Hills than people think because it's a road game for them. It's going to be It's going to be an interesting environment for Coach Dan Laurie and his team. Yeah, Bloomfield Hills is very athletic, but so is Avondale. Avondale's had a lot of heartbreaking losses. I think they're going to be very competitive in this game. I've got Bloomfield Hills winning this game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Avondale pulls off a upset in this one. So Bloomfield Hills better be careful in this one against a very good against a Yellow Jackets team with nothing to lose. And Avondale has got nothing to lose in Auburn Hills in this one against a very good underappreciative and I think underrated Yellow Jackets team, even though the record doesn't indicate it. But it's going to be an interesting game when you look at this one. Next, we got Rochester taking on Berkeley. Of course, this one here is going to be an interesting game. Berkeley lost 26-3 last week to Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory. And looking at this game, as mentioned, I think, though, when I look at this one, this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a very good game between these two teams. Berkeley's got something to prove. I think now that Chris Sequoia's got their attention now, after I thought Berkeley's been cruising in the regular season. But Berkeley's got to be very careful here of Rochester. Rochester's been red hot. They've won 2 straight games. I don't trust Rochester's defense in this one. But Berkeley, kind of been giving up points too, so it could be an offensive shootout. But I got to give an edge to Berkeley here in this game, knocking off Rochester. But it wouldn't surprise me if Rochester goes to 3-2 and knock off Berkeley. I think it's going to be a heck of a game between those two teams. And last but not least, we got Adams and Harrison. This is the game of the week in the league. Of course, Harrison came off a huge win over West Bloomfield last week where they held West Bloomfield to minus 12 yards rushing, which is absolutely incredible. And Adams coming off a very tough loss to Oak Park in overtime, 44-43. I think, though, in this game here, I think John Harrington's going to have all the right moves to stop the veer option. He shut down West Bloomfield's passing attack. It wouldn't surprise me he stops Adams' veer option attack. And I think he will do that. He'll do just enough to confuse Kyle Wood. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a good game, I think, between those two teams. I got to give an edge to Harrison being at home. And it'll be very interesting how this pulls out. I think it's going to be another close game. But at the end of the day, I think the Hawks are going to beat the Highlanders in a heck of a game and a wild and crazy game between those two teams. Final thoughts, you know what I mean? When we look at volleyball, of course, volleyball will be very interesting coming up. Of course, we've got league plays already started this week. Of course, we'll keep an eye on the blogs for latest volleyball information. And we'll see what happens going forward. Of course, soccer, same thing. We'll see what happens going forward there. Along with tennis, swimming and all that. So we'll keep an eye on it going forward. So we'll see what happens. Okay, now everybody, I'm going to sign off here. Of course, stay safe. Of course, follow me on the Inside the OA blog. I'm at Sammy/Terramina@blogspot.com. That's the OA, Inside the OA page. And the and for latest information on Lake Orion Athletics, you can take a look at the at the Dragons Den blog at SaginawBay@blogspot.com. So keep an eye on both blogs going forward. So okay, now everybody, I'm gonna sign off here. Good night, everybody. Take care. God bless all. Take care and see you all soon.
OAA Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.